So I just want to confirm that Chris Chandler and Mary Ann Chandler are not joining us by phone. That's it? No, we don't have anybody up there.
All right, I guess we're going to close public testimony, and now we're going to go about commission business and deliberate. So,
Okay, the item in this month's agenda is a holdover from last month.
Yep.
Our city attorney is on the line to provide some comment just up front related to proceedings. Just a reminder that the public hearing was closed and the record was left open specifically for the applicant to provide details related to the suitability of the open space by June 24th, and then for the public to provide response until July 1st, and then for the applicant to have an opportunity for rebuttal by July 7th. That was what was laid out at the last meeting, and that was the full period of the open record. There's no other opportunity to comment on the record past or during that time. So just want to remind the planning commissioners about that. Can you see if somebody joined?
did someone join? State your name, please.
So we're having some streaming problems, just to let you know. So
Okay.
I put it out on social media and also on our streaming that people have the option to call and listen as
Okay.
well.
Cool. Just want to make sure it's one of those. Somebody moved their phone. So that's just a reminder of where we are. I'll ask our city attorney, Ann Davies, to step in here whenever she wants after I try to explain the next process here. There was concern related to some of the information that was submitted by the applicant, that there was new information and new evidence in the record that wasn't part of what the record was open for. So that issue has been raised, and staff has consulted their attorney and has decided to let you know that there is no recommendation to open the public hearing up again, because the hearing was closed. But should you see that as new evidence that you would like to decide to open the record again, that is an option for you. So, Ann, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, so I just want to, and I'll definitely leave it open to people to ask me questions if they want, but I just wanted to be clear on, our understanding of how this process happened is that even though we don't have the minutes of the last meeting, they're not done yet because the minute taker has been delayed, I think, because of COVID reasons. Are you guys able to hear me okay?
Yes.
So we don't have the minutes, so I don't know exactly what was said, but my recollection, and usually how it happens, is that that the planning commission decided, based on staff and my recommendation, to open the record and to submit certain materials based on the open space requirement. The second open record period was for parties on the other side, so opposing parties, to respond to that new evidence, and then a third open record period for final rebuttal, which generally does not allow for new evidence. And the reason that is because the opponents then don't have another opportunity to respond to any new evidence. So that's kind of usually how that open record period goes, and that was how it was stated in my recollection anyway, without being able to look at the minutes. So when the open record happened, There was a statement by the applicant that came in at the very first open record period, and then in the second open record period, the opponent arguably went outside the direction of the Planning Commission and submitted argument and potentially evidence. I think it was just argument that went beyond that open space requirement. And then in response, the applicant, in their final rebuttal, submitted evidence. I understand that they're arguing that it wasn't evidence, but there's basically a site plan, and that would legally be considered new evidence. So because new evidence was submitted, you have two options. One option, well, three options. You could reopen the hearing, which is not required. That's my understanding is that's what the opponent is requesting. That's not required. What you could do is you could take in all of the submittals in the open record period and then reopen the record to allow the opponent to respond to the new evidence and then allow another final rebuttal and then have another meeting where you deliberate. In the alternative, you could decide not to take in that new evidence that was submitted in the final rebuttal because it was beyond what was dictated and arguably not considered the second record period because that was beyond what was dictated. So those are your options. I hope I didn't confuse you more than necessary, and I'm happy to answer questions as you look through your deliberations.
Well, may I raise a point of clarification or order?
Well, please.
Kelly Beckley for the applicant.
Please.
The landscape plan that was submitted was just conceptual. What the objection was that the 4 parcels were not suitable for development in a way that would meet the public good. And so what we did was hire a landscape architect who developed a conceptual plan. The city's going to develop that in any way they feel is appropriate. We just submitted that information to show how it could be developed in a way that was consistent and that would provide a pleasant open space that could be used for multiple reasons. The developer isn't going to build it. It's a conceptual plan. And so I don't see it as new evidence. I see it as, hey, this is something that could be done with it. It is a clarification of the 4 parcels that we have included in the subdivision to be used for parks and open spaces.
Were any lines changed?
Sorry?
On the drawing, were any lines changed or anything? Okay.
So after that explanation from our city attorney, you, the Planning Commission, have your either of those 3 options that are laid out to you. So I guess as staff, we're here to answer questions and support anything.
This is our non-private conversation. It is weird with masks. I'm not trying to exclude you. I'm just turning to face the most. I'm just concerned about our questions that we want to answer, and if they answer those in a substantive way that meets the requirements. Do you have any other concerns?
Pardon?
Do you have any other concerns?
Actually, I do have a point of contention, and I sought outside expert opinion on how this plays out because the hearing was closed, or the hearing's open, but the public testimony was closed. At the start of the public hearing last meeting, evidence came to light that upon further review, I feel like I need to recuse myself from the vote.
Okay.
On the fact that my landlord has stated publicly his opposition to this, And my concern would be that as a body, if we choose to deny the applicant the opportunity, that could come back. I don't know how that affects, I know that I'm allowed to do that. My concern is I don't know how that affects this tonight because there's 4 of us.
We don't have a quorum now.
Right,
Well,
and did you hear that?
Yeah, let me clarify, just because it's a little spotty what I heard. It sounds like there is a planning commissioner who is thinking that he needs to recuse himself because his landlord is opposed to the development.
That is a short version, yes.
Yeah, unless there's more to it than that, that wouldn't necessarily, it certainly wouldn't require you to recuse yourself. If you are feeling like you can make a fair decision based on the evidence before you, then you certainly wouldn't have to recuse yourself for that reason.
Well, and if I can speak freely in chair, I believe I could make a fair decision. My concern would be if the attorneys for the applicant decides that is grounds for, it's a he said versus she said situation, in my opinion, and I don't want to put that on this body, so.
Well, also, I mean, did you have discussions with the?
No, we have not had any discussions. There's public testimony that has my landlord's name on it.
Okay.
And because it's in the public domain, I just wanted to put all the cards out there, and I feel that is probably in my best decision, and as well as the decision for this particular commission, that I should probably recuse myself, and that's my opinion.
Let me weigh in here. So process-wise, what would generally happen is at the beginning of the hearing, you disclose any inability to make a neutral decision and recuse yourself for reasons of conflicts of interest or other reasons why you can't make a fair decision.
Correct.
I understand that the situation probably puts you in a awkward position, which is a different issue than your inability to make a neutral decision, which is what we are concerned about. The applicant could certainly challenge your impartiality. My inclination is to think the applicant probably wouldn't do that in this case because they are probably more interested in having a decision rather than punching this further because there's no quorum.
Sure.
So in a way, I'm trying to maybe urge you to do your duty as a planning commissioner and make the decision even though it might be uncomfortable because the law doesn't really, it certainly doesn't require you to recuse yourself in this situation.
Okay. I mean, the uncomfortableness of the situation isn't of concern to me. It's more a matter of jeopardizing
Right.
something going forward. And if you're saying from your legal perspective that that's not an issue, then I'm fine making a vote tonight.
Yeah, okay, I understand where that concern was, and I appreciate your coming forward and questioning that, because I can see why you might think that would be a reason to recuse yourself, but unless the applicant is really wishing to challenge the impartiality, then I think it's probably best to move forward.
All right. Thank you.
That was a lot more than I bargained for when I asked you if you had any concerns. Yeah. So does anyone else have any issues other than? I guess my thing is we just asked them to address the land issue, for recreation, and so that's been addressed in a substantive way.
Well, it's your guys' request. So I mean, staff presented the attachments as received. So that is your request as planning commission to ask for more details to clarify the suitability of the parks and open space set-aside plan. And just to summarize that, the applicant left the site plan as is, and since the layout and density requirements made moving the land around and making bigger parcels tough to meet the code requirements, they weren't able to just by moving land and making lots bigger and that sort of thing. So in the code, there was another way to meet that, and that was to pay into a land acquisition fund. And so they decided to do that and also leave the open space as it was. So that's the summary of what was proposed.
So I remember speaking when the lady whose name I can't remember from the Parks Committee, she specifically stated that they should either pay in or reallocate, and that was her issue.
Right.
So that's
I think I remember that as
okay.
well.
Yep. All right.
So based upon that, that is your, as the planning commission's, your decision to take in whether that what you asked for was received well enough. And then there was the options related to the open record submittals that our city attorney laid out for you, should you decide to consider any of those.
And what was that?
Well, there were three. One was open the public hearing, or no, reopen the public hearing to a later date, which city attorney said not required. Open the record for a period, just sort of like we did last time, for response from the opponents, and then a rebuttal period as well, rebuttal by the applicant, and then deliberate at a later date.
That's submitting new evidence.
It would be, the purpose of taking that option would be to agree that there was evidence that was new based upon the last submittal that you think that the opponents should have opportunity to respond to. That would be the purpose of taking that route. That's number two. And the third would be to not consider what could be construed as new evidence and deliberate without considering that.
Have we got new evidence?
That's what the question's been raised. The new evidence is so that the point of leaving the record open was very specific.
Right.
Respond to the open space and parks suitability.
Right.
The first submission, which was what they proposed as paying into the fund and leaving it the same, that was a very simple response. The sort of problem arose when there was opponent response to that, which raised a bunch of other issues. Not a bunch. It's being a little hyperbolic. There are a few other issues.
That's this. Is this a dish show?
Yes, the show.
Dish show or whatever it is.
There was some other issues raised, which were outside of what was asked by the Planning Commission, and when the applicant had their rebuttal to that response, they chose to respond to that, which was their right, of course, because it was raised, but that whole opening up of new information possibility is what the question is.
Well, if it pleases the commissioners.
Is there open hearing going on?
No.
It's not me.
Is there an open hearing?
No, we're debating right now, so we're just.
This is the second time he's talking.
I understand, but I didn't recognize it, and
Understood.
so, are you addressing an issue that Jeff discussed or?
I am.
Or Mike?
No, point of order, he can't speak unless you're gonna give each one of
I
them.
understand, yeah, he didn't, but Jeff didn't ask a question, that's I didn't understand that you asked a question.
I didn't ask anything.
Okay, so that's, right, so right now it's closed for more input, so. And I mean that respectfully, I don't.
Thank you. So what I just laid out is that's really
All right, so.
issues or
So
not.
if I understand it correctly, this show not only replies to the park and open space, but also gives us a whole bunch of other reasons not to approve it. And which is not what we asked for, which is basically new evidence.
Not necessarily, that could be, if she brought up new information that wasn't already part of the public hearing. And so the issue was brought up again after the applicant responded to that rebuttal that there could be new information that was brought up by the applicant. That is your discretion and decision to decide whether that is true or not. And you've got those three options to go forward.
So just from my thinking is that the applicant didn't introduce anything new. I mean, he introduced just pretty colors on the same map. And that's my understanding. And if council disagrees with that, I'm very receptive to any input she might have. But that's, so
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
So this is Ann.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not clear exactly what how the new map is different from what might have been in the record beforehand. But the fact that there is a new site plan, or even if it's conceptual, that's still new evidence, and I would be very cautious in making a determination that that's not new evidence, because
Okay.
that could get overturned at RUBA.
Understood. All right.
So if you're considering addressing that, the option of deliberation would mean that you would not consider that new evidence, that supposed new evidence at all. It could not. You would need to state that it's not part of any record or part of your
Understood.
decision making.
So
That would be that
this is
option.
Ann again. I want to back it up a little bit. So the inappropriate submittal actually started with a second open record period when it went beyond the scope of what was allowed, which was the open space requirement. So what you could do if you wanted to is you could both disregard the part of the second submittal that went beyond the scope allowed and then disregard the new evidence also.
Good point. Yes.
That would be my preference. So, however, Commissioner Marshall.
I'm sure I understood all that. As far as the conceptual drawing as being evidence, if that's what it is, then I don't need to consider it, so it's irrelevant. Now, the question comes is whether or not the idea of paying in lieu of or in addition to the open space, is that new evidence?
That's what you asked for. So no.
Okay. So really
Well, you asked for a response. You didn't ask for that response, I should say.
that's correct, but, and that is, if by code, that's an acceptable way to go about, since, if I understand it right, if there's nothing more suitable, or no other way around it, he can go ahead and put into this fund instead of putting up
Yes.
additional property.
That is,
In a sense.
it's an either-or
All right.
situation for park and recreation acquisitions.
Right.
So yes.
And just a point of clarification, the two lots, A, B, and C, I believe that's
The total open space is A, B, C, D.
the A, B, C, D. Okay. That is part of their storm water requirement and design, is that correct?
It doesn't, the code doesn't require it to be that way. No. It is, there are stormwater details that will be in the regular right-of-way infrastructure, and this is in addition to hold the capacity of stormwater events.
Okay.
As
And whose property would that become in the event that this does not become open space? I just had it.
well, the way it's set up, this would be deeded to the city as open space, basically.
Okay.
And open space can be a lot of things,
Okay.
eventually.
All right.
But it would be the city's responsibility to do that.
To do anything to it, right?
Okay.
In the initial build out, there would be, as part of all the infrastructure, a portion of B, is A the one in the west? Yeah, part of B, C, and D that would have stormwater facilities in it, but not the entire thing. Right, and that is not, that was discussed during the public hearing last month.
The other information that was in the issue and the rebuttal talked about the through street issue. And let's see, that would be in that the applicant offered out a reserve strip. Is that new evidence?
Anything that is beyond, this is what, based on the attorney's advice, anything that is beyond what was asked for in the open record, which goes back to that second, those in, against the proposal, Bishop Consulting and others, anything that offers new evidence would be new evidence. So that could be, and the applicant's response to that could be, if you consider that. Because that was definitely not part of the original proposal. That's true.
I'm trying to go back and look at your finding in regard to that code. What did you have?
Well, it would take some research on that. It wasn't part of the direction to do anything, so I would not be able
Well,
to.
didn't you address it in the original report?
Right, a month and a half ago. But there wasn't any direction to do anything related to this from the last meeting, so there wasn't any staff time spent on that at all.
Well, is there basically a violation of code in regard to the through street? I gather we're talking about through Van Dyne through and from whatever street that is.
Since
John,
we're,
will you speak up a little bit?
yeah, since we're at the point of past public hearing and staff report recommendation, I can simply just point to the staff report as presented and not make any other comment or determination.
Mhm.
Did you have you can ask the city attorney a question, John, if you have questions too.
Well, I'm trying to determine whether or not the issue of the through streets was addressed in the initial staff report on this, on the application. And if it wasn't addressed, then the opposition went ahead and addressed it as new evidence, and then the applicant rebutted that. That is new evidence. Is that correct?
Mhm.
That is what she's saying could be considered new evidence, but the option is that you do not consider that public testimony that was received outside of the scope. that was asked for. You could consider it, and then you're running into the option of potentially leaving the record open because new evidence has been received.
I kind of understand that part. My question is, though, is if we have an issue here that basically, if I'm not mistaken, would be considered a violation of code. And so...
Can I jump in here?
Please do.
I think it's the difference between what was at the end of the hearing last month. It was determined to limit the open record period to only the one issue of the open space.
Okay.
So even though it was a criterion that might have been valid to talk about, the Planning Commission, I think, and this is where I'm really frustrated that we don't have the minutes, but my recollection is, and the Planning Commissioner's recollections might be better than mine, was, okay, we're only going to leave it open for the applicant to address that open space, because that was the only issue that was really still open. So that's the reason that anything that came in during the open record period would have had to have been limited to that open space issue. Nothing to do with what was in the staff report or what the approval criteria are in general. It's just that the Planning Commission had decided they had narrowed it down to this one issue that they needed more information on, and that's what the applicant was going to submit something on.
Which was what could be done with that open space, correct?
Which was the suitability,
The suitability
of what was proposed,
for the
right?
open space.
Which is why the proposal ended up being, well, we're going to pay into the land acquisition fund not in addition to what was already in the site plan.
John, this issue was not brought up last time. This was not even recognized as an issue, if it is one.
The through street.
Yeah.
So that through street is what's in question as being new evidence?
Well, anything that is outside of
Okay.
open space and park
Is all
suitability
new evidence?
would be, yes.
And so we could choose just not to address that, or?
Okay.
Hey, Laura.
Can somebody mute their phone, please? Whoever has hold music.
Yeah, I just heard from John, and he said that...
Excuse me? Can you please mute your phone?
He's like, oh, no, it's not. But he's okay.
Ann, I'm going to mute this and call you on your line.
Or, okay. Oh, no.
Thought we all learned to mute over the last few months.
I feel
Thank
like
you,
the open
Sandy.
space issue has been addressed.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing is about the through streets, that's new evidence.
Hi.
Hi.
Are you on,
We could just
are we
change
on
it
this
to
line now?
see that.
You are. You're on my cell phone now.
Okay.
Or whatever you want.
Any clarifying questions or anything, or, I don't know where you guys are at.
I'm just kind of confused as far as that through street stuff, because that wasn't part of the original submittal. And so now that has been brought up, and I don't know who brought that idea up. I guess it was talked about as why was there no connection, and I thought it was because of they couldn't acquire that.
Well, I don't know if, I mean, there's a
just-
lot of different things that were talked about. Some related to code, most not. So, should the planning commission want to go to that direction where it's a whole different conversation
Yeah.
that would start, and we're not talking about what the record was open for. if deliberation includes talking about what was brought up in the open record, then you're going to have to make one of those options, decisions on one of those options on when to move forward, because you're talking about the information that was received that was outside of what the record was open for.
Yep.
Okay.
Commissioner Marshall, have you addressed your questions?
It did.
All right.
Basically, if we were not able to discuss or deliberate without bringing in new evidence concerning the through streets, I gather that will be a point of contention going forward that will be used to appeal our decision if we elect to approve.
Okay.
Would I be correct on that, attorney, city attorney?
I'm sorry, it was a hard time. Can someone summarize that who's closer to the speaker?
Here, I'm gonna be your microphone holder.
If we don't bring up in new evidence, in other words, we're pretty well aware of the situation on this through street, we don't bring that up and don't deliberate on it and make a decision ignoring that information, well, our decision, if we were to approve the applicant, well, wouldn't that be a basis for appeal going to city council?
I'm trying to remember whether the appeal on city council, what we're trying to figure out is if that is error, if error, it could be cured on an appeal at the city council. I can't remember if the appeal is de novo or on the record. Do you remember, Sammy?
It's not in the room.
Or Jeff?
I don't remember what the type of hearing it is at city council. I think it might be de novo hearing.
So if you want to talk about the through street, then what you should do is you should consider everything that came in. You should reopen the record, have a final rebuttal, and meet again in 2 or 3 weeks.
Thank you, Ann.
Now,
does that make sense?
It does, in a perfectly good sense, because I don't see where we have any choice not to do that at this point.
Did the applicant rebut the last input? Did they have an opportunity?
Yeah, but it's regardless, it's new evidence, so am I correct on that?
Yeah, sort of, because it's not 1 for 1, equal for equal, so that is your decision to make whether you're considering this new evidence as to something to keep the record open, or open the record again, I should say, because it's not open right now.
Okay, and we need a motion to that?
Yeah.
If the planning commission wants to open the record, they would need to state for what specifically, for how long, and if there's going to be a next meeting date, establish that date. Just like last time. Last time you left the record open for the open space suitability for the applicant for 7 days. Resident rebuttal 7 days after that, and applicant rebuttal 6 days after that, with a meeting set specifically for this meeting tonight, July 15th at 7 p.m. So use that framework if you want to do that.
Have you guys got any comments?
You gotta look at me.
No, I'm just, there are only four of us.
Is
so
that,
we
is
do
that
each
enough
other.
grounds to leave it open because of that
I mean,
possibility?
that's something to consider. I mean, they addressed the open spaces issue that we had.
Yeah, I mean, even
So-
if they were to do that, to have that, you know, if we were to open it to allow for that through street, I guess is what the question is now.
Is the through street an issue? And
I-
that's, I guess we could, I mean, it wasn't brought up last time, so it's new. But how long are we gonna do this? Are we just gonna keep every 2 weeks? We're just
Because then
gonna
they can just bring it up
meet
again
forever,
for
ever,
other
ever,
new
and that's-
things.
The city has until August 22nd to make final decision.
And is that including like any kind of appeal through city
Everything.
council? Everything? So, in all honesty, I think we need to make a decision tonight that would give any sort of chance of an appeal to go through.
Is that,
Otherwise, it's,
I mean, there's time, it's limited time. If there was an opportunity to leave the record open, my recommendation is going to be to not push it out a month, to make it 2 weeks from now. And at that point, July 29th, at that point, there would be 24 days remaining in the final, on the final date. So you would, and the appeal period is 14 days. So city council would have to meet potentially with about 5 to 6 days notice for an appeal in that timeline.
all right.
Should you make a decision tonight, an appeal, well, you cut 2 weeks off of that.
I'm in favor of making a decision tonight, but
Let's make this.
they can make a decision tonight.
Okay, so, let's do it. All right, so when you say make a decision, I guess this is just to clarify. When you say you're ready to make a decision to find for approval or disapproval of the subdevelopment?
Yeah, right?
Okay, just.
yeah, I
okay,
mean, just
just
vote
wanted-
if we're gonna allow this or not.
Okay,
To talk about the,
all right, I don't, I just wanted to address any concerns that you had.
I don't,
Okay, as far as I'm concerned, if we choose to go ahead, not enter into evidence, we still have the opportunity here to deliberate what was presented at the last meeting.
Yep.
And there's some questions that I have concerning North Skinner. The information provided by staff and the condition that he put in.
Are you talking about the traffic study or the widening?
Probably the widening and the build out of North Skinner. At the last meeting, I'll remind you that there was a recommendation to amend that condition to more specific language. Condition 4 of the staff recommendation currently reads, as part of the public improvements process, the applicant shall improve the off-site roadway access points to a minimum of 2 vehicle access lanes or at least to fire access standards and requirements, and that's not clear enough. So the recommendation was, very simply, as I remember it here, as part of the public improvements process, the applicant shall improve the off-site roadway access points to a 16-foot width.
Yep.
Very specific. And the improvements shall include but not be limited to widening and on-street parking restrictions related to that widening, because that right-of-way is very narrow already.
Yep.
Well, a couple of questions there. Number one, I thought the code was quite clear that if in fact that was a marginal street, the applicant or developer had to get it and provide additional right-of-way to bring that street up to standard.
Does not require that, no.
It doesn't say that?
There is a part of the code that says the city may acquire additional right-of-way in circumstances like that.
Well, I read the code as saying existing streets, whenever an existing street adjacent to or within a tract or in adequate width, if we can say that Skinner is additional right-of-way shall be provided at the time of the land division.
Well, the first part of that is the part that is discretionary then. But you're saying it is.
Excuse me?
The first part of that inadequacy is discretionary there.
Well, okay. Then I will go back to goal 12 of our comprehensive plan that speaks to policy 2.4, which speaks to extra right-of-way, and policy 28 that said that we should maintain a shared street concept. In other words, allowing pedestrians and bicycles and everything else. Whereas what's been proposed is a two-lane traffic, widening out for two-lane traffic for cars, restricting off-street parking, but no allowance given for pedestrians.
That's the same width of it's provided in local streets right now. The Coburg standards don't allow any extra room, only the roadway.
That is correct. But this is an inadequate street right away, right?
Potentially, yes, that's why the recommendation is to widen it, just the pavement.
Well, am I correct in, are they planning on running two-way traffic down North Skinner?
That's
the subdivision.
That's the reason for the widening. Correct. That would be one of the reasons for the widening.
Okay. So we appear to be ignoring our comprehensive plan goals, as far as I'm concerned. At least on North Skinner.
Ann, did you have anything to add to that?
No,
Okay. You can hear though?
yeah, I can hear that.
Okay.
That's all the questions I have.
Commissioner Marshall, could you, since I'm kind of new to the community, could you explain to me in further detail maybe how you feel their widening the street does not comply with the
Well,
master?
First of all, we have city street standards.
Yeah.
Now, we can't, obviously, this street cannot be brought up to that, I guess, local street standard. So it is what it is. The fact that we're going to extend North Skinner into a new subdivision and put two-lane traffic on it, widen it out for two-lane traffic, restrict on-street parking, which they're using right now, and basically ignore pedestrian safety and bicycle use by bicycles. That's what it looks like to me. My preference would be to see that North Skinner is just basically nothing more than a fire access road, not to be used as part of the access into the subdivision, and that their traffic be basically funneled to Coleman, which is of sufficient width and right of way, and or at least for the pavement may not be, but where road base is. At least that's what I've seen, what I've walked and measured and everything else that I've looked at. In addition, Locust comes in Locust, at the very end of Locust, and the very, before it hits, just before it hits East Skinner, is also substandard. That hasn't been addressed, so.
Would it be possible to do a condition of approval to, I mean, I don't know how this works, but essentially not allow traffic to go down Skinner and have everybody go down Coleman? I mean, is that?
I'd say that's much bigger than a condition of approval.
Yeah, that would.
There's no way to know if that would pass any sort of traffic impact study or anything like that.
I think a lot of people.
Or be fire safe.
Have an issue.
Well, yeah, there's a whole host of things that would open. With one. Well, the fire chief hasn't reviewed the plan and said it's okay, that's why.
Anyway, that's what I see in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the traffic count again? It was 40, what did I say the numbers were? 47 or something. 47.
Roughly it's 10 trips per household per day.
10 trips per household per day, so what did she say, he say?
I'm not a traffic engineer, but that's my engineer faking it number.
30 entering and 18 exiting trips.
Yeah, they're spread out accordingly
throughout
to the 2 different access roads.
And half of which by the park.
And then the other half would go down Coleman, leading to Pearl Street and out to the freeway. Which
Yeah,
is where
there's
most
peak considerations, of course, peak AM and PM and that sort of thing. It's all in the traffic study. But yeah, there's even modeled the exact amount of people that will turn right there at that intersection and peak times that were studied.
I guess another question might be on the improvement. How far is that improvement on North?
As written, it would be from the edge of the subdivided property, potentially subdivided property, through that intersection, whatever doesn't meet the 16-foot width.
Through which intersection?
Locust and Skinner, sorry.
John, I got a buggy about your mask.
Locust is not up to par either.
Put the guy's mask on.
John, put your mask on.
So in other words, the condition would be to improve North Skinner to Locust.
It says to and through, but I actually just walked through there today, and I'm fairly certain that intersection is at least 16 feet wide.
Okay.
In the pre-application with our engineer in Public Works and myself and the applicant, Skinner was the only street discussed related to off-site improvements.
Right.
That's why that was focused. Just for full disclosure on how that is, why that's worded that way.
Okay. That's all my questions.
Okay.
The concerns I've had is North Skinner.
And so we're done deliberating?
I guess, but I just want to make one just quick statement.
Oh, okay.
Huh?
Okay.
Can I do that? So, as laying out a subdivision is not an easy task. I've done it. It is very difficult. And seeing this plan in a neighborhood, in an area that has been zoned residential already and is within the urban growth boundary, to me, this is, you know, you have to meet that density requirement. You have to have that certain number of lots available for houses. And you have to have the recreation in such a way that we could use it as a recreation space. And I believe that this plan does have the potential to be a really nice development for the city of Coburg, bringing new people, new revenue. Everybody wants to live in Coburg. That's why most people moved here in the first place. And having Coleman Street, living off of Coleman Street with the whole Hayden Homes development going through, yes, it does increase traffic, but there are ways around that. And I don't believe that the planning, it's not a planning issue as far as that. It's more of a citywide, making it known about the speed limits, and there's ways to address that. And I just don't feel that as the lots and the way the layout is and the actual planning of the subdivision is not really the place to address the traffic problems in the city. So I just wanted to say that. And living with the New Hayden Homes, after a while, the traffic does die down. I mean, even with everybody living at home. So, it is a cold bucket of water coming on you when you start see people moving in and all these new people, new faces walking by the streets. But at the same time, it brings new people, new community, new friends. So for me, I don't know. I just wanted to get that out there, and just that the traffic is an issue that does need to be addressed in the city. But like I said, this is about the planning and the way that the lots were. Does it go with the code? And so that's where I feel that our discussion should be headed towards. So that's just my thoughts. If you can agree or disagree, I don't really pull that against anybody. So.
That's your job. That's good. Seth, do you have anything?
No, this seemed pretty straightforward to me. I value the concern from the community, but I also reference the findings of fact, and with the conditions laid forth, it seems to me that it meets them. So my decision is based on that.
All right, I guess I'll entertain a motion to...
Real quick, I want to go over the motion possibilities, just so it's done stated correctly and followed through correctly.
Appreciate that.
Obviously, you can deny the application. You'd have to come up with findings to support your denial. You can approve the application as presented as a staff report. But there's one condition that I talked about altering. So if somebody's going to make a motion, they would need to say, move to approve the application as amended. With this language of condition 4, as part of the public improvement process, the applicant shall improve their off-site roadway access points to a 16-foot width. Improvement shall include but not be limited to pavement widening, on-street parking restrictions. That's the full condition. So you don't have to state that condition, you can just say as amended.
Okay.
I just don't want to get that lost in there.
All right.
And I think that was the only language of any condition that was talked about needing to be changed. So
okay. So I'll entertain a motion to either approve or disapprove the subdevelopment as amended, approval as amended by the road access, the 16-foot thing. Do I need to say that specifically?
No.
All right. No motions? We're gonna say.
I thought you just made a motion.
No, I can't.
You can't.
Oh. So I motion to approve the what is this? The
application.
The application,
Yeah.
thank you. The application as amended with the language of the condition of number 4, as Jeff stated.
That's good.
Somebody has to second it. Sorry, Dan.
I'll second that.
All right. Do you want to do a roll call vote? Or are you gonna?
You can just do an all in
Yeah,
favor.
we need to do it. Well, oh, yeah.
Oh.
No, that'll work. There's nobody on the phone. You're right.
Yeah, you can do an all in favor and then all opposed and an abstain type.
Okay, so all in favor? Raise your hand.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
All right, that's it.
Vote is 3-1.
Yes. 3-1.
Got that, man.
Okay. I know it feels strange to just move on, but the next item is city updates. This is a standing item on the planning commission. This is a report or city updates for the month that's included in city council packets and planning commission packets. I usually try to highlight a few things that I'm intimately involved with, so I know the details of. Let's see if there's anything here. We have a new finance director.
Yay.
Yeah, and very happy.
Who is the new finance director?
His name is Tim Gaines.
Okay.
Came to us from another community close, from Harrisburg.
Oh.
Let's see here. I don't know if there's any.
Might not talk about a little bit about the water project.
Yeah, it's a water project, yeah. Water project's got a lot of, well, not, it seems like a lot of moving parts. I think I've talked about the bore for under the freeway to go to the east side to get water over there. That's out to bid right now, actually, that project. So most likely late summer, early fall, that will be constructed, that bore. That doesn't mean there's going to be pipes to everything over there right away, but that part of it's going to be done. Also, a third well site is being negotiated, and so I've updated you here and there, let you know that we're looking for a third well. Site's located, kind of go into the negotiations for the property to figure out agreements on that. We'll still have to test it and make sure it's okay before finalization, but that is a lot closer now. There's no other specific water projects going right now. Johnny Diamond Park is almost done.
Yay.
I mean, you guys have probably seen that. And there's a project that I mentioned before, that the community build-out scenario. It's a project that the mayor's spearheaded to basically, we've hired a consultant by way of LCOG. There's this firm called Urban Collaborative who's doing this scenario, sort of build-out scenario of what our city could look like based upon code, highlighting several different spots that are vacant or underdeveloped right now. Just to give, the mayor wanted to do this project to get conversation going, basically. So that's, there'll be some public interaction opportunity pretty soon on that, actually. So I've seen some of the draft stuff, and it's gonna, I think we're looking like August or September for that. I'm not really sure if there's any other things to highlight. If there's anything in there, of course, that I will help answer. But Ann Heath is here too, so she can answer probably a whole lot more than I could. I guess there's one other update. This is my last planning commission. My last day of work is Friday. So
Sad to see you.
that wasn't in there.
You'll be missed.
Do you have a replacement yet, or no?
What are you gonna be doing?
I am moving to California. I get various reactions from that. Or, oh. My wife and I moved here from Sacramento, and so we're moving back to the Sacramento area. And I'll be working for El Dorado Hills Community Services District, which is a special district east of Sacramento, right next to Folsom, actually. And it is a district that provides parks and programs and other various things. It's an unincorporated area, so the special districts and like sheriffs and fire, they sort of cobble together what you would get as city services normally, because it's not incorporated. It's an area of 45,000 population, so it's quite large. So I'll be the only planner there in the Parks and Planning Department, and doing project management planning and outreach.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hopefully you enjoy it.
Hopefully.
Picture replacement.
No, the city is going to utilize LCOG for planning services in at least the short term, and sort of gauge what are the needs going forward for any sort of position in the planning department. And then at some point, the needs will arise and there will be a decision made. But for the next couple of months, it'll be LCOG helping with planning, which will be some of Ann Davies as our city attorney advising, but also Henry Hurley, who was or is on the call still, I don't know. LCOG provides this sort of planning service for a lot of small cities that don't have planners or planning departments. So, like Lowell, I think, and other small cities around, Yoncalla, Drain, Oakland, small cities like that.
Did you ever hear back from the county that way on that urban growth boundary thing?
No, not at this time.
Is that urban growth boundary discussion going to come out in that community build-out scenario meetings?
Not necessarily, because that's just what we have. The build-out scenario is what's already in the city or in the urban growth boundary, because one of those sites that we're considering the community build-out is the 106 acres of presumed industrial land that's only in the urban growth boundary, not in the city limits at this point. They will be annexing, we think. It's been a long conversation that hasn't actually materialized yet, but that's one of the sites for the build-out scenario. So, and that's the only part of the area that's within the urban growth boundary that's not in the city limits. That site is the only one. The next time an urban growth boundary expansion for residential purposes will be discussed will be probably right around a year from now, as we'll get our Portland State population projections updates at that point.
Okay.
Any questions about the city updates?
I have none.
Anything else, I should say?
I think that's it. Are we done?
Yeah, if there's no other questions, the last item is number 8, and that says adjournment.
Let us,
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
thank you, Jeff, very much.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I never thought I'd stay here for 6 years, but I loved it. So.
Good. Did
we adjourn?
Yes.
Okay. So now we can say whatever we want. I'm kidding.